Zaid Hamid, founding consultant of Brass Tacks, a security and defense analysis firm based here in Islamabad. Thanks a lot, Hamid. Now, there's a shift. People are saying, some analysts are saying there is a shift. What's your view?
Ahmed, first I would say that whatever Pakistan did in Kabul amounts to throwing a bombshell on the US foreign policy and on the Karzai regime. Having said that, I will come to the background of those events just before the Jirga took place, because understanding of this background is necessary to understand what Pakistan did in Kabul in tribal Jirga. And interestingly, what Pakistan did, you are right.
So you're increasing the suspense now.
Has been blacked out almost in the entire Western media, and nobody is discussing about it, what Pakistan has done. And it is indeed a strategic shift in the Pakistan's thinking towards Afghanistan and then in the larger context.
But no Pakistani official called it a strategic shift.
Now, this is very interesting, because once you understand the background, you will see the situation where Pakistan built it up. Now, we need to see, this is what we need to see, whether Pakistan pursues it to its logical conclusion or uses that only as a threat.
So what is that, the shift?
I'm coming to that now. You see, before this Jirga, the relationship between United States and the Muslim world in general, Pakistan in particular, and President Musharraf in very particular, had been deteriorating rapidly. From the perspective of the Muslim world, the statements which come out from the presidential candidates or from the President of the United States mean nothing at all. They're almost as good as coming from the White House itself. So when the US presidential candidate says they are going to bomb Makkah and Medina, obviously the emotions would run very high within the Muslim world, and the reaction you could see in Pakistan were also very, very radical. Now, then the relationship between Pakistan and America itself were deteriorating rapidly for the last couple of months, especially when the Obama and other US officials gave threats that they are going to bomb Pakistan, invade Pakistan, try to secure Pakistan's nuclear assets, and Pakistan is a larger threat for the American security. Pakistanis don't take it lying down. This is kind of rubbish that Pakistani people and even the Pakistan's National Assembly did not take it lying down. One of the, in fact, the parliamentary secretary of defense actually went out to the limit of saying that Pakistan should declare jihad against the Americans.
And he was a member of the ruling
ruling party, though the government tried to limit the damage, but that reflected the emotions that ran across the floor, across the political divide in the Pakistani parliament. And after that,
the third
dimension is the relationship between President Musharraf and America now are also at the rock bottom. The Americans are now forcing him to take the uniform off. Americans are forcing him to say, turn towards the other political forces.
No, Zaid, I'll go even further and say that maybe they're even trying to destabilize his government.
And statements at that moment when he was so vulnerable, particularly after the Lal Masjid incidents, and asking him to do more at that moment when he'd already done more than enough, so it was definitely meant to destabilize him. So these three things converged just before Jirga. And when the Jirga came, my analysis is President Musharraf first gave a big snub, refused to go. In my assessment, it was a snub.
But nobody officially said that it's a snub, really.
You don't say that. The body language, the tone, the demeanor reflect. If the security was the issue, why did the Prime Minister go? Prime Minister is as important as the President.
True.
The Prime Minister went. Pakistanis were angry. Let's put it like this. And particularly President Musharraf himself was angry. And when he went there, and that's where the real game begins, what Pakistan did over there.
That's a shift. You're coming now
to
the strategic shift. Yeah.
My analysis is that Pakistan has now made a strategic shift in its relationship towards Afghanistan, in its association towards America in this so-called war on terror. President Musharraf, for the first time after 9/11, went to Kabul and says Taliban are not terrorists.
Not all Taliban.
Not all Taliban are terrorists. Taliban, which implied there should be a distinction made between terrorism and war of liberation and freedom.
No, but wait a second. Make me understand, Zaid, this point. Because he did, if I recall correctly, he did mention the hardcore militant Taliban with whom you cannot have a discussion.
You see, he meant the Al-Qaeda, Zawahiri, and all those Takfiri groups, which absolutely are incorrigible, which you cannot talk to, he will not accept, and he will not accept any kind of talks or dialogue or political process. Second, one of the Pakistani delegations went a step ahead and demanded withdrawal of US and foreign troops from Afghanistan to be replaced by Muslim forces.
This was a Pakistani delegate.
This was a Pakistani delegate. So obviously, the delegation went with a briefing. Delegation went with a strategy. And the third, the final declaration which the Jirga made was that a committee would be formed, it was formed, which would initiate talks with Taliban to bring them on board onto the peace process. The recognition that Taliban are not terrorists.
But Zaid, wait, make me understand this and make the viewers understand. Now, when the president, the Pakistani president says, and you have to make a distinction and begin talks with the Taliban, Taliban should be included. And then this resolution that you're referring to. But we know very clearly the position of the Afghan government. They don't want to hold talks with the Taliban. And so is the position of the American government. So how could this be viable?
This is precisely a very interesting point here, because this is what Pakistan has done. Pakistan has made its intentions very clear now. Pakistan has told the Karzai government and the American, that's precisely the reason they blacked it out. That's precisely the reason they're not.
What do you mean by blacked it out?
You don't, do you hear discussion about these points in the international media and between the Karzai government and the American administration? You don't. That's called blacking it out. That means, you see, they are not amused at the idea that Pakistan is suggesting leave Afghanistan to the Afghans and let Muslim world decide its own problems. They are not, this is what it means, I put it simply. And there is also larger dynamics to it also. Ahmed, you listen. Just last week, the SCO, the Shanghai group between China and Russia, conducted their joint military exercise, unprecedented. And they very categorically sent a message to the Americans.
In their summit meeting?
In the summit meeting and in the exercises as well, they sent a very categoric message, leave this area, Central Asia.
Yeah, stay out of Central Asia.
Stay out of Central Asia, yeah. This area belongs to us. Now, for the first time, two nuclear powers, China and Russia, got together to send a joint message to the Americans. Now, interestingly, one thing that you'll find it very interesting is, even Taliban sent a message to SCO approaching Russia and China, asking them for recognition on joint struggle, common objectives. Amazing, very interesting.
Joint struggle
against the Americans, keeping the.
But nobody will take them seriously, Zed.
No, I think people will, for the simple reason. Now, why I'm saying that is that there are signs to suggest that Russians are already making contacts with Taliban.
Really?
And the entire scenario of the 80s is coming a full circle, which means the way Americans used to support the resistance against the Soviets, now the Russians are supporting the resistance against the Americans.
And other regional players
and
might
other
get
regional
in.
have already got in. Reason, again, just recently you heard a statement from China coming out, and it was a suggestion to the world, informing them that they have a clout over Taliban as well by suggesting they could mediate between the South Korean hostages and the Taliban. And that message came from China. Now, if you put this scenario in front of you, when SCO sends messages to the Americans, Taliban reach out to SCO, Russians reach out to Taliban, and Chinese send signals that we have influence over
what about the
Taliban.
Iranians then? Does this mean that the Americans are right when they say that they have suspicion the Iranians are also supporting or in contact with the Taliban?
You see, unless the hell freeze is over, I don't think Iranians supporting Taliban.
Because there's a lot of bad blood.
There's a lot of bad blood between them. Iran is still very supportive of the Karzai government, and Karzai is very sympathetic towards the Iranians, and they have very close relationship because of the previous bad blood, as you said.
In fact, President Bush has snubbed President Karzai on this point, on Iran's point. And he was defending Iran, and Bush said, you know, stop defending Iran.
Precisely. This is precisely the point. So, now, when this scenario you put in place, and see where Pakistan and the history of Pakistan-US relationship, as I said, it was deteriorating in the Muslim world, deteriorating with Pakistan, and personally with President Musharraf. What should President Musharraf should have done, or Pakistan should have done in Jirga? Precisely the same, saying the Taliban are not terrorists, they represent majority Pashtuns in Afghanistan and should be brought into the mainstream. Foreign forces should be thrown out, replaced by peacekeepers from the Muslim world, because the history suggests that Afghans will not accept any non-Muslim forces inside Afghanistan.
Let me warn you about a point here, Zed. Listening to